So in this video I'm going to be talking about controls and input, or input and controls. So that's input from the keyboard and the mouse, converting them into a nice medium to use as controls. So in this case there's a class, an object called controls, with definitions for events that would manipulate the gameplay. So in this case, character moving forward, backwards, left, right, jump, sprint, attack, reload, drop, pause, and so on and so forth. So when more features added and you want them to be bound to a key, you would define a new key, define the key on the keyboard. This is using Unity's key code. So in this case for reloading it's keycode.r, and also how that key is going to be represented. So with reload we want the key press type to be just on the down, so only when the key is pressed down do we want it to be triggered, not when it's being held down. Where in cases like running forward, we just want to know if the if the player is holding the key W, we want it to be triggered over and over and over again. Whereas in reload we just want it to be pressed once, and that's on the detection of the key being pressed down. There's also built-in events for pressing when the player releases the key, but that's not really used, even though the functionality is still put in. So this key object is not Unity based. This is custom. So it's got the key code and the key press type. This is just a custom enum. It's just down, up, and pressed. Nothing very fancy. It's easier than using booleans. More flexible, easy expandable, but also serializable, so we can save them to a file. Unfortunately, the Unity key code, even though it is just an enum based on integers, this is not serializable. I've made a lot of effort to trying to get this key code type to be saved into a JSON format and saved into a file, but regardless of what method I try, what tricks I use, I cannot reliably convert to and from this key code enum consistently enough to make it a proper function. It would require a lot of very ineffective casting, but also having to deserialize the file 2 or 3 times as it's saved as a string, and also as this key press type is also going to be saved into the same file, I have to serialize that as well. So with the controls, as you saw here, there's 2 different constructors, one with just the key code and one with the key code and the key press type. This is used just using one constructor, as you can see, but it's used a technique known as optional parameters. So if you define a variable with a value in as a parameter, this is essentially just a default. So we don't have to specify this, but if we do want to specify it, it will just override this perfectly fine. This also makes it a lot cleaner than having 2 different parameters, 2 different constructors which do the same thing. Now, converting the actual key to a control. So what that means is converting the D down to a boolean. So if you press D to move right, if you want to be detected in code as a boolean, this is what this method here does. It's a static implicit operator. So what this does is, at the moment it's just using the switch to go through the different enums. So what it's saying, so if I get an example of this, let's use reload. So let me find the actual proper defined control object. Here it is. So on this update loop, it's saying, is the player pressing the attack key? Is the player pressing the reload key? Is the attacker pressing the drop key? That's how you would call to check to see if the player is pressing something on the keyboard. and it's all through this one method here. So it converts the key code and the key press type. So depending on how you want it to be detected, so the input to be detected, would be different based on what you do. Would be different, on how it's called back into the Unity engine. So when the key is down, it's just get key down. If it's up, get key up. In my experience, even though this is pretty much pointless in terms of actual functionality, it's just a lot easier to use, in my opinion. Because rather than just having to do if input.getKey down, this key here, it's a bit messier, but also it's a lot more segregated from other keys. So what I mean by that is, if I had if input is equal to W here, if input is equal to A over there, there's a chance I might duplicate a key somewhere. But also, what this does is it only allows me to have one key to one action, where if I had everything individually, I might have one key to two actions, or possibly two actions to one key, which could cause issues. It still could cause issues by using this, but it's a lot less. Yeah, it's a lot less likely to happen. So these are just some public methods. Well, they're really expression bodies, but I went in this in the first video. So these are just essentially one-line methods, which instead of having all the empty parameters, the extra braces with just this in it, it just says, yep, just when this is called, just call this. It's a lot cleaner. So even though these are not used by anything, they're just nice to have, just in case somebody were to use them. So, and also, it does allow, if you specified a key or a mouse press just to be on the button down, if you do want to detect if that is still being held down, you can do through these extra methods. So as I've used it here, so this is just check to see if I've been pressing the key down, but also with the auto fire, if I'm continuously holding the key, so if a gun is fully automatic rather than having to click to shoot, so instead of having to keep on calling this one attack key over and over again, you can just detect to see if it's being held down. And I believe that is it for keys and input. Horizontal. Sorry, one last thing. This horizontal is more of a helper method. It's not really. So helper property. It's not a method. It's just a lot cleaner and easier to use when trying to define movement. So I've used it here. So this one line here deals with getting the input on the keyboard to actual movement vectors. So this, you can tell this is very easy to understand. The move direction is made up of the horizontal movement and the vertical movement of the keyboard. And the way I've done this is just detect if the left is if the left is held down, then in terms of vectors, you want the character to move left, so in vector form that would be -1. If the player wants to move right, in vector form that would just be +1. The same with vertical. If you want to move forward, we would go positive into the vector. If you want to move backwards, we'd go negative into the vector. And that is it for this video.